So I'll give you an example. I'm paraphrasing. I don't have the exact quote in mind, but let's say someone writes to me and says, I am working in a cognitive neuroscience lab with Professor so and so, and he found out that I posted something that was complimentary of Trump, and he decided to remove my name from a paper that I've been working on for 2 years. And now it looks like I need to go to another place to study. Hey, are you taking graduate students, Dr. Saad? And I'm thinking,
Wow.
is it not unbelievable that a student has to actually write to me because his supervisor found out that he said something complimentary about Donald Trump? But that's the reality that we live in. So I think the greatest scourge is not so much that people are getting canceled, is that people live in an environment where they are afraid of uttering a single syllable that would then cause them to be canceled. That's not the way you want to build universities with free exchange of ideas.
No, and I agree with you. And we're going to get more into your book in a moment. But given what you said before, that the biggest concern is the engagement of self-censorship. So, for example, this student didn't self-censor, and he spoke freely on, I guess, a private opinion forum, and then got called out and canceled, essentially. So when the stakes are that high, and now the student's got to up and leave perhaps to a new university and start up from scratch, that's 2 years gone. How do you justify, or how do you encourage people not to self-censor when the cancel culture is so aggressive?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to sound as though I'm being flippant, but I'm not. So in chapter 8 of the book, which I guess we'll talk about in a second, I talk about activate your inner honey badger. And the reason why I mentioned the honey badger is because the honey badger is a animal that's the size of a small dog, and yet it can withstand an attack of 6 adult lions because it is ferocious, it is fierce, it is so intimidating that
Hmm.
adult lions are afraid of it. Well, you need to be an ideological honey badger, meaning that if you have ideas that you can support on first principles that are well articulated, you should never back down. Now, the reason why I said, oh, some people might think that's flippant, because then they'll typically come back and say, oh, but you're a famous professor, you're protected by tenure. Well, tenure didn't protect me from the million death threats that I would receive. Tenure didn't protect me from all the opportunities that I have lost because I am so outspoken. So we all have a cross
Right.
to bear. The people who landed on Normandy 75 plus years ago didn't have guaranteed safe passage. They knew they were going to be mowed down like little mosquitoes by Nazi machine guns, and yet they did it so that you and I can have this conversation today. So, yes, there are costs to bear, but if everybody stands up together in unison and speaks out, we will resolve this problem by next Tuesday. If we don't, it'll be a long, long ride to hell.
Wow, well said. Okay, so that leads us to your book. So what compelled you to write this book?
So I basically, in the first chapter, I talk about 2 great wars that I have faced. The first great war was as a Lebanese Jew in Lebanon, growing up in Lebanon, where the civil war broke out. And I saw what a society that is organized according identity politic lines, what it can descend into. And the second great war that I experienced was 40 plus years later as a professor, where I saw the war on reason, on science, on
Mm.
evidence-based thinking, on common sense, on logic. And so I wrote this book because I simply needed to document, if you'd like, not only the disease, right? So there's the COVID pandemic, but there's the global pandemic of the human mind that's been festering on university campuses for 40, 50 years. And so I wanted to document that epidemic and then to offer, hopefully, a vaccine or an inoculation against these idea pathogens.
Well, I guess if we're not getting vaccines for COVID fast enough, then perhaps we can help inoculate against this alleged concern.
Well said.
There you go. Um, so you refer to ideas as as pathogenic like creatures. Can you expand upon that in the 45 seconds we have left?
Oh, okay. 45 is going to be tough. So, as an evolutionary psychologist, what I often do is look at other animals to compare to the human reality. And so I stumbled on a field called neuroparasitology, where you study how parasites go to an organism's brain and alter its behavior to suit its purposes. And so I had found the perfect framework to then analogize what idea pathogens can do to human brains. They lead us to the abyss of infinite lunacy.